Good evening, everybody. Hope you've all had a really fantastic week. We're back at it for our sixth shiur of Chayei Moharan. B'ezras Hashem is going to be a very exciting one, as always. This week, not only is it Rosh Chodesh Adar, beginning of Adar, and our first shiur in Adar, but this is also our first shiur that we are streaming live on Zoom as well as Instagram. So, Shechianu v'Kiyamanu is a very exciting time. So, without further ado, let's get started. For the next 2 weeks in Chayei Moharan, we're actually going to be looking at two recounts from Rebbe Nachman's first ever student, Reb Shimon ben Ber, who he met actually on the wedding day of Rebbe Nachman. So it's going to be a very interesting next 2 weeks for this shiur. There were several questions that I had while preparing. As usual, I usually have questions while I'm preparing for the shiur, but this week was an interesting one. But as usual, if you have any questions, comments, or insights or thoughts throughout the shiur, if you're on Instagram, feel free to comment. If you're on Zoom, you can comment. Or if you're watching the recording live on YouTube, please feel free to chime in at any time, and I'll do my best to either answer your question during the shiur or in the next episode. So, without further ado, I thought we could do a little bit of an experiment for this week. So, sit back, relax, and let's immerse ourselves in a very special moment and travel back to the time of Aleph Nisan 1784. So imagine yourself, you're at the wedding of young Rebbe Nachman in Mezhebush. It's the day that he marries his Kala, Rebbes and Sasha. Let's begin. It's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, 1784. The crisp spring air carries the scent of freshly baked challah from the homes of Mezhebush. The streets are alive with anticipation. It is the wedding day of young Nachman ben Fega ben Simcha, the great-grandson of the holy Baal Shem Tov. We step into the wedding hall where the sound of lively fiddles, clarinets, and tambourines fill the air. The tables are lined with flickering oil lamps, their warm glow illuminating the faces of tzaddikim, chassidim, and townspeople who have gathered to celebrate. The chuppah stands tall, draped in fine white fabric, fluttering gently in the night breeze. The music begins to play louder as the crowd joins in song. We move towards the singing as we see the young Rebbe's hands lifting the veil to cover the face of his Kala. In today's lesson in Chayei Moharan, we're going to dive into the initiation process, if you can call it that, of what it's like to have been the first chassidim of Rabbeinu. Even at the age of 13, he was deeply in tune with the spiritual needs of those closest to him, as we soon see. And as we continue our study, let's try hold this image from this meditation in our minds and keep this wedding close, just as we did in this brief session. So, without further ado, let's get started in tonight's shiur and learning tonight's lesson. So, throughout our learning, I've chosen 7 key character traits. 7, as we know, in Yiddishkeit holds a very deep significance. It's a very holy number. It's not only the 7 days of creation, but also I tried to connect the 7 lower spheros of Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus to 7 different character traits and examples of leadership that I feel like Rebbe Nachman is displaying in our learning tonight, and I'm going to do my best to connect those two together. They're not necessarily in the same order of the 7 spheres, but I feel like they each one connects to something that Rebbe Nachman displays in what we're about to learn. Okay, let's get started. V'sipur li Rabbi Shimon Hanal. So, Reb Nosson is saying that Reb Shimon ben Ber, Rebbe Nachman's first student, once told over the following anecdote. Shetekav achar shekiso Rabbeinu Zal pnei hakala b'yom asu nasai Immediately after Rebbe Nachman had covered the face of his kala in the bedekin, right before the chuppah ceremony on the day of his wedding, halach miad vekara kama b'nei haneurim v'diber im kol echad ve'echad b'yechidus. Rebbe Nachman immediately went over and called some of the young men in the wedding hall and spoke to each one individually. So here we have attribute number one, and this I'm calling individual attention and personal engagement. And this is, I am saying, I feel is connected to the meat of chesed, the meat of loving kindness. And how is this so? So a leader is someone who takes the time to engage with and understand each of his followers' unique position. And here, I feel Rebbe Nachman is displaying a personal attention to each of the individuals that are at this chasana of his, and he's showing the trait of chesed, which is all about compassion, kindness, and opening him. He's taking them aside and speaking them on an individual level. And he didn't just give broad advice, as we soon see, but he's going to give tailored wisdom to meet each people exactly where they are, find out where they're struggling, find out where they're striving, and he's showing a deep personal connection to each person's journey. So here, what we're about to see is a midah of chesed, but it's also going to lead on to the next midah, which I'm saying is connected to chachma. So v'nisa oisam b'chachmasai heichan eim oimdim. He asked very subtly, but in a way of probing, with wisdom, where are his students? Where are these b'nei neurim, these youngsters, young men? Where are they holding spiritually? So a leader is someone who uses wisdom to understand the true nature and spiritual state of their followers. And here, by the words that Reb Nosson is using, we can see that Rebbe Nachman is using that chachma. He's using that wisdom to be able to speak to his followers. And Reb Nosson is using those exact words. So, ba'achar kach kara es Rabbi Shimon v'hischol ledaber imoy gam kein b'chachma ki ilu huroitza chas v'shalom hevlei olam hazeh. So next, Rabbi Nachman called over Rabbi Shimon, and he began to speak to him in a similar way, with this subtle wisdom, but also probing to try and understand where spiritually Rabbi Shimon was holding. And Rabbi Nachman was speaking to him as if in a way that he himself on a level was interested in very worldly matters. And we're going to come back to this one. I'm actually going to jump to number 5. Oh, we have a comment here. Yeah, that is a great point. Someone's pointing out here on Instagram Live that this month we should celebrate Rebbe Nachman more. Absolutely, every month we should, but especially Adar. And I have a couple reels. If you follow us on our channel on Instagram, quick plug, you'll see we have some exciting reels coming our way for Nissan, especially related to Rebbe Nachman's teaching of Likutei Moharan, lesson 10, which touches a lot on Purim. Also, Nissan will be celebrating Rebbe Nachman as well. So great point. Okay, jumping back in though, I'm just actually going to skip to midah number 5. Like I said, I might be going out of order, and here we're going to see the role of netzach, which is here I'm saying it's endurance and persistence. By the way, Rebbe Nachman is probing Reb Shimon, but he's showing that a leader is someone who leads by example, showing others the way through their actions. And here, Rebbe Nachman might be displaying his mannerisms in a way that he's showing interest in worldly matters, but he's trying to speak in a way of getting on the level of the people that he's speaking to. So here, Netzach, I would say, represents endurance, drive, persistence, and is reflected in how Rebbe Nachman is leading by example. And he didn't just ask his followers to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself, and his consistent, enduring commitment to the spiritual path inspired those around him to persist, even in the face of challenges. We're going to see this a little bit more in a second. Rabbi Shimon Alman Mishtoimim, and when Rabbi Shimon realized that this is how Rabbi Nachman was presenting himself in the way that he was probing these questions, he answered Rabbi Nachman, but he didn't really answer him because he wasn't interested in worldly matters. Ana Rabbeinu Zalva Amar Elav, so Rabbeinu spoke to him and he said the following: V'chi ein ata ben Adam, are you not a man? Are you not like normal human? How come you're not interested in the worldly matters of this world, of the just regular desires? Hey Shivlois, Rabbi Shimon responded to him, Ani ishtam v'chayfetz bit mimos. I am a simple man, and all I desire is purity and simplicity. So, Ana Rabbeinu Zal v'amar Loi, so Rabbeinu answers him and says the following, Kifi hanira, it would seem, sheyiheh hakerus gadol beinenu, that we are going to have a very great connection that's going to form between us. But Amr Leibel Shain Ashkenaz, and he said to him in Ashkenaz, meaning Yiddish, Sehat aponim azmir velen zich kennen, that we're going to have a very, very strong, great connection between the two of us. Achar kach sipar loy Rabbeinu Zal, then Rabbeinu spoke to him some more, Shadiber im elu b'nei hanaurim v'nisa uvachanoisam. So then Rabbeinu told Reb Shimon, the conversation that he had with the young people just before he spoke to Reb Shimon. And Rabbeinu told Reb Shimon how these young men he felt were far from Hashem. Afgam heim pagumim, how they had these spiritual blemishes, Obala Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, and unfortunately they were men who had averas. They succumbed to their taivas and to their desires. And here we see a spiritual sensitivity, and I'm connecting this to the midah of bina, which is understanding. A leader who is aware of the spiritual struggles of their followers and offers guidance with compassion. And we see that that's how Rabbeinu connected with Reb Shimon and said that they're going to have that strong bond because that commonality that they have between them. And bina, or understanding, involves looking deeper into the spiritual state of a person. And Rabbeinu demonstrated this beautifully. He didn't judge the flaws of his followers, but instead understood their struggles and helped them navigate back to spiritual wholeness. And that's one of the many ways he attracted so many people and grew such a following, and still grows such a following to this day. So his deep empathy is what made him such a true guide. I think this is going to lead also very nicely into the next midah. Obviously, since we did the midah of Netzach, this is going to cross over to the midah of Hoid, which is, I'm titling this one, Encouragement for Spiritual Growth. V'teka if halach Rabbeinu Zal im Rabbi Shimon al hasadeh v'dibur yachad harbe b'avodas Hashem b'hishtokigus gadol. Immediately after they had this brief interaction, this brief discussion, they left the wedding hall and they went to the nearby field, and the two of them spoke. They spoke together a lot on the topic of avodas Hashem with great enthusiasm. V'diber Rabbeinu Zal Rabbi Shimon, Rabbeinu said to Reb Shimon, diver hisaris harbe, gave him lots of spiritual encouragement with great fervor. And he said the following: She'ein shum tachlis ba'olam hazeh, ki im lifrosh mertavos olam hazeh v'laved es Hashem yisbarach. The only purpose, says Rabbeinu to Reb Shimon, the only purpose in this world is to separate from taivas, from spiritual desires, and to serve Hashem. Ubefrat anoichi, and says Rabbeinu, this is especially applicable to me, referring to the Rebbe, Shahayoim Yom Chupasi Omarchalin Li Kol Havoinos, because today is my wedding day and I'm forgiven, I'm absolved of all my previous averos. Bavada ani tzarich le fashvesh b'maseh harbe, and therefore I need to examine myself very carefully, because kayotze bazeh hadvarim diber imay harbe, and it carried on talking in this way. And they continue walking and speaking all the way up until the point of the chuppah, when Rabbeinu was married off to his kala. Asher hazoicha b'yom chupasei lachshev al tachlis be'emes. Praises the one who on the day of his wedding thinks and reflects on his own true purpose. So we're not done yet. We've still got more to cover. But I think this is a very, very powerful moment And here we see a very interesting example where Rabbeinu says, "Ubiprat anoichi," especially me. There's many times in Rebbe Nachman's teachings, the more you learn, the more you see this. But many people, when they initially start learning Rebbe Nachman's teachings, have this question where Rabbeinu very often talks about himself in first person. The greatest example of this is he says, "Ani ish pele v'nishmasi pele gadol." I'm a man of great wonder, and my neshama is of great wonder. So there's many other examples where he speaks this way, and I'm connecting it because the idea of Uvifrata Noichi, where he says especially applicable to me. So an issue when people start learning breslev, this is something that stands out to them. How do you have a tzaddik that's talking about himself in such a great way? And the greatest example and answer to this was actually given by my Rav, Rabbi Avram Gisselson. Or if you watch this YouTube channel, you'll have seen many of his amazing shiurim. So as my teacher, he gave me the following example. So if chas v'shalom, there's someone who's really, really sick, and he's looking for the greatest doctor, the greatest specialist that they can go to be able to have some sort of cure. Often they'll go from doctor to doctor, get second opinions until they finally reach the person that can help them. So when that person arrives and meets that specialist, if that specialist is one who is a man of science, and he may in fact have had the cure and he created the cure, or if he discovered the solution to this person's ailment, then he's going to tell that patient, "I am the doctor that you should be seeking to be able to help you in this situation. No other doctor has this sort of treatment that can help you." So if you take this analogy and lahavdil, you refer it to Rebbe Nachman. Rebbe Nachman is this greatest surgeon, the greatest spiritual doctor who can help us. So, of course, in the way he's going to be talking about it, if he's been able, in his hard work of connecting to Hashem, and he's giving that advice to us, then this is the way that he's going to be phrasing his spiritual solutions and his spiritual cures, advice, and wisdom. So, just a point I wanted to touch on. So, continuing on, Ume'az v'hala, from here on, Niskasha Rabbi Shimon im Rabbeinu Zal. Rabbi Shimon was connected to Rabbi Nachman from that day on. V'hu Zal, and referring to Rabbi Shimon, Dibur imoy harbe behis iris gadol v'haya medaber al liboy. He spoke a lot with Rabbeinu with great fervor. V'haya medaber al liboy. The Rebbe would speak with him on matters of the heart. Shiase kemoisai lifrosh atzmai min ha'olam lagamre. That Reb Shimon should do like the Rebbe does, to try to separate himself from the taivas, from the physical desires of the world. To struggle, toil, and busy himself rakba avodas yisborach, only in spiritual serving of Hashem. Aval Rabbi Shimon Amar Lai, but Rabbi Shimon said to him, Atem. Interesting here, he uses the plural of you, referring to Rabbi Nachman. I want to say that this is using the word atem in a matter of great respect. He says, Atem bavadai tizku liyos tzaddik mefursam. You, referring to Rebbe Nachman, are definitely going to merit to be a very well-known great tzaddik. Va'ani chofetz lihiyos meshamish eslechem tamid v'chein hava. And says Reb Shimon, I am going to merit to be your attendant always to you. Many Rebbeim have a shamish, have an attendant, and this is what Reb Shimon was assigning himself to him, and that's exactly what happened. Alagam Rabbi Shimon haya ish kasher muflag b'mala. But Rabbi Shimon in his own right was also a really great man. And now we're touching on the idea of hoid, encouragement. So a leader is someone who encourages their followers to strive for spiritual improvement and spiritual growth. And hoid here represents humility and gratitude. And touching on the quote from Rebbe Shimon about Rebbe Nachman's greatness, Hoid also has to do with splendor. It's an idea of greatness as well. Interesting enough, in Svir Sa'omer, during the 7 weeks of Svira, there are many Chassidim, and if I'm remembering correctly, there's a lot of Bostoner Chassidim as well, who will not say Tachnun the entire week of Hoid, especially the day of Lag BaOmer falls out on Hoid Shabahoid, but just a fun fact that on the whole week of Hoid, there are many Chassidim that actually won't say Tachnun. Anyway, here, Hoid represents humility and gratitude. Rabbeinu exemplified these qualities by encouraging others to strive for spiritual greatness. And he didn't elevate himself, but he rather humbly he served others. Even by the way he was speaking, still he did it in a manner of humility because he knew how he could help his students, urging them to grow spiritually while offering his own guidance. And his encouragement wasn't just about words, it was really a call to action for his students to find ways to pick themselves up, sometimes even the darkest moments of spirituality. And this focus on humility and growth is the foundation of all these traits, which brings us to our final midah, which we're going to see in a moment. Kishamati mipi Rabbeinu Zal, says Reb Nosson, I heard from the Rebbe himself, Lifnei Kama Shanim, about a few years ago, obviously this is at the time that was written before Rebbe Nachman's passing, Rabbi Shimon Kfar Shavar Kol Hamidas Ra'is Legamrei, that Rabbi Shimon himself, from following Rabbeinu's guidance, he was able to break all his bad character traits. And here, I feel like this point is really well connected to the midah of Yesod, referred to as foundation. And a leader, someone who's committed to continual spiritual involvement, fulfillment, improvement, and shows humility also in their actions. And the fact that Rabbeinu, at such a young age of 13, was able to inspire Rabbi Shimon and create this great friendship and bond that to lift him up and to inspire him to really achieve his full potential, I think this is really well connected to the idea of Yesod, the idea of foundation, and some of the greatest spiritual maladies, but also the greatest spiritual improvement is in this aspect of Yesod. And therefore, that's why I feel like this last point is very much connected to that idea. So Yesod represents foundation of all other traits. And Rabbeinu's own humility and commitment to spiritual growth were really the bedrock of his leadership. And some of the greatest spiritual advice that Rabbeinu gives is connected to this midah and sphera of Yesod. And he never stopped striving for improvement, constantly refining himself in order to be the best guide for others. And his humility wasn't just a virtue, it was really the foundation of his leadership. And Yesod, if anyone knows, obviously, we all know the story of Yosef, how he held back from sinning with the wife of Potiphar, tried to seduce him, and he held back from doing this Avera, is connected to the midah of Yesod, because that is where that Avera is connected to that part of the body and that sphera. And just like Yosef is that main key example for that, that main example for Yesod and striving to stay strong in those difficult moments, in those moments of really strong desire. He's a great example for us, and this is similar how Rebbe Nachman was a great example of resisting those temptations of the spiritual world to strive for greatness and connection to Hashem. So I think when we look at Rebbe Nachman's leadership, we see a model that really transcends time. And these 7 traits, which I've called individual attention, wisdom, sensitivity, clarity of purpose, role modeling, encouragement, and humility, are all connected to these spheres. And each one, I feel, plays a very vital role in shaping how we can lead with strength, compassion, and integrity. So to conclude, like Rabbeinu's wisdom, then through his wisdom and through his advice that he provides, I think we can strive to refine our own character, and we too can lead by example, constantly growing and guiding others to fulfill their potential. Through this, we become, I think, true leaders of our generation if we really can apply ourselves to our full potential and following that path that was laid before us with the wisdom and humility of Rabbeinu. Just a very quick plug before we finish. If you noticed this hoodie that I was wearing today, this was created with the help of my very good friend, Ariel Weisberg. If you're on Instagram, you should follow his account as well. That's Sparks of Breslev. And he has a beautiful online shop that connects you to all the major sefarim that you can get in Breslev online. And that's breslevshop.org. So you too can get yourself one of these hoodies. But if you're also looking for a really simple and achievable way to purchase your Breslev sefarim online, I highly recommend checking that out. In addition, I am very happy to finally announce that waiting for me on my doorstep after my many travels this past few weeks was our Tikkun HaKlali. So I personally have 50 copies of these with me, and if we run out by handing these in person, we will definitely print some more, but you too can purchase these yourself. If you search Tikkun HaKlali on Amazon, you can be able to purchase free shipping to wherever you are in the United States or Canada or abroad. So very exciting, and it's with benching, Birkas Kot Mazoin. It's got Kriyas Shema, and it's got Tfilas Haderech with English translation of the Tikkun HaKlali and a short introduction as well. So feel free to purchase this, but until then, I am very much looking forward to continuing our shiur number 7 next week, Monday night. So thank you everybody for joining.